Toyota's Camry has always been a practical family sedan, but it's never really been very sporty, even since they added an optional V6 engine about 30 years ago. Now I'm here with the new 2020 Toyota Camry TRD, which takes the V6 Camry and adds a bunch of other options to make it an actual sporty sedan. Toyota's TRD engineers took the regular Camry V6 and added a bunch of different go-fast options. They started with a body kit and aerodynamics package to bigger wheels, bigger tires, bigger brake rotors, and 2-piston front calipers, some extra body stiffening, and a little wing out back. They did not modify the Camry's V6 engine as the regular 3.5-liter, 301 horsepower, or the 8-speed automatic transmission. But regardless, Toyota says that this Camry TRD is the sportiest option if you're looking for a practical family sedan from their lineup. So I'm here at Summit Point Raceway in Summit Point, West Virginia, and I've spent the day beating up on this Camry just a little bit to see if Toyota's claims really can come true. We ran Summit Point's Jefferson circuit in race direction and in reverse. First up, race direction with some commentary on the car's track prowess. Even spinning tires, the Camry puts power down easily and in a straight line with no detectable torque steer. Turn-in is typical for front-wheel drive and requires careful throttle use to reduce understeer, especially in tighter entries. Corner exit is tough as the open differential sends power to the wheel with least resistance, and the transmission never holds the gear you request even with the paddles. The constant shifting is disorienting as the car upshifts and downshifts on its own, even though in this case you do actually know better. Once you've got your chosen gear, or something close, the Camry does pull eagerly out of bigger sweepers. The V6 is a very smooth partner and makes great power and noise all the way to redline. Hard braking was accomplished with confidence and minimal fade, though the pads did have plenty of time to cool down between hard runs. The Camry TRD comes on a set of Michelin all-season tires wrapped around its 19-inch wheels. Some grippier summer tires and a more aggressive alignment would go a long way in helping the handling, although we're still not quite sure what to do about the transmission tube. Our test course on the Jefferson circuit only used about 2/3 of the circuit. Now, let's head over to the next video and see it run counter race. Alright, so post-track day impressions of the 2020 Toyota Camry TRD. Obviously a racetrack is not really where this car is meant to shine, but it is meant to be the sportiest offering in the Camry lineup. So how has Toyota succeeded in that mission? Personally, I think they've done a pretty good job. This is not the ultimate sports car, it's not the ultimate sports sedan, but it's a pretty good representation of what most people I think are actually looking for when they say they want a sportier version of a basic sedan. Now, as I mentioned before, the Camry TRD is the most inexpensive way to get into the V6 version of the Camry. And obviously with that $31,000 MSRP, you're not going to have all of the available options that you get on some of the higher Camry trim levels like the XLE or XSE or even some of the hybrids. So the TRD is missing a sunroof, it's missing premium audio, it only has a power driver's seat, not passenger, it's only got a backup camera, not a 360 view. Some of the nicer trims offer a heads-up display that this one doesn't get. This one doesn't even have heated seats, let alone cooled seats. Now, I'm not mentioning the lack of features to complain. Rather, I think having the feature count be so focused is kind of a perk of the TRD. They're really focusing on sportiness and lightweight over everything else. Unfortunately, the Toyota website doesn't accurately depict the difference in weight between a TRD and an XSE or XLE V6. It shows everything is the same, even down to the options that are offered, so something's not quite right with that configurator. But regardless, when you think about a sportier version of a sedan, you don't necessarily want a big panoramic sunroof because that puts weight high up where it would affect your center of gravity. You don't necessarily need the premium audio system or the heavier powered seats because that just affects overall weight. If you're going to prioritize where you spend money developing the vehicle, as well as where you spend weight developing the vehicle, why not put it towards performance editions instead of just more creature comforts? So obviously, if you're looking for something with more creature comforts, they offer this V6 engine in a slightly less sporty variant, whether that's the XSE or the XLE. So driving the Camry TRD made me think of other sporty sedans from years past, and one of the most direct comparisons I could draw is to the late 90s, early 2000s Nissan Maxima. Those cars were obviously not quite as sports focused from a visual perspective, but they were kind of sleepers that were quicker than you might think and more capable than you might think and handled better than you might think, even though they presented as a regular family sedan on the surface. Now, speaking about the different little upgrades that Toyota did to really distinguish the Camry TRD from the other V6 models, you've got the aerodynamics, you've got the suspension, you've got the chassis stiffening, the catback exhaust, and so on. I really think it does all come together and work pretty well. I think the exhaust sounds nice when it's at higher RPMs where the engine really makes its power, but also is not too droney or annoying at cruising speeds. I think the suspension is pretty good, not too harsh, not too stiff when you're driving around town. The chassis bracing bit is a little hard to compare given I had no other Camrys to directly compare against when I was at the track day, but it is quite admirable that Toyota thought to even do something that extensive with a car like this. I did think the brakes were quite good given what they're bolted to. You've got the bigger front rotors, you've got the 2-piston front calipers. They did inspire a lot of confidence in my stopping attempts, although the one piece is that I didn't get to do repeated lap after lap after lap driving or corner after corner driving on a back road. When we were doing this track cross sort of format, there was a bit of time between each run that I did. So the pads and fluid and everything did get a chance to cool down at least a little bit between each run. My biggest areas for improvement with this Camry TRD are all about the handling and chassis setup. So personally, if I were trying to make this a little bit better on the track, on back roads, I would probably try to dial in a bit of front camber to help the car turn in a little bit more. I'd also try and get a better tire on it. This car came to me with some Michelin all-season tires. Now, I do believe Toyota offers a summer tire as the standard tire option. Given it's January, they brought it to me on a set of the optional no-cost all-seasons. So a grippier tire, a little bit more camber would certainly go a long way in helping with things. The third piece that would help is having an actual limited slip differential between the transmission and the drive wheels. Right now it's an open diff, so the power goes to the wheel of least resistance, and that's really kind of difficult when you're trying to put power down out of a corner. That's not a problem unique to the Camry TRD. It's fairly unheard of at this point to find a limited slip diff in many cars, just given the expense and the advancement of electronics, but regardless, it would be nice to have. And then speaking of electronics, the transmission programming in this car is maddening. There is a sport mode for the drive settings, there is a sport mode for the transmission, and you have plus and minus paddles that will control the intended gear on the steering wheel. With all of that said, the transmission will upshift and downshift on its own mid-corner, completely upsetting whatever you were trying to do. I was navigating an off-ramp in third gear, everything felt very good, and halfway through the off-ramp, the transmission decided that second gear was a better idea. So things like that, that's an easy programming change, but if you're going to build this car as something that's sporty and even give it paddle shifters on the steering wheel, let me choose my own gear and let me bang it against redline as long as I want. I understand Toyota may have chosen not to do that for the sake of engine longevity or something, but regardless, it's worth mentioning because that really was easily the worst part of the whole car. I'm not going to spend a lot of time discussing interior details or more on the amenities. I think plenty of other people have covered that by now. This is definitely a slightly more Spartan version of a Camry compared to what you can get on some trim levels. Doesn't really bother me. The one thing that does bother me though is the main gauges in the instrument cluster. The backlighting has been changed from some other color to red. Toyota took that sporty idea and put red gauges in the instrument cluster for the Camry TRD, which is unique to all the other Camrys. The problem is the rest of the buttons in this car at night are lit up in this kind of ice blue color, which I suspect is what you get in any Camry regardless of trim. Obviously, it's probably not very cost effective to change everything else to be red to match the backlit gauges, but you get this weird kind of ping-pongy effect at night because your eyes are trying to focus on the red gauges and then they're going over here to the blue climate controls and the blue steering wheel buttons and back to the red gauges. And truthfully, it makes for a distracting, disorienting experience more than anything sporty. So, kind of a disappointment there, given the intent of red gauges is actually to be the easiest way for your eyes to transition in the dark from looking out the windshield back to the gauges and back out the windshield. So, it adds a sporty vibe, but it doesn't actually accomplish what the red backlighting ever set out to do in the first place, which was to alleviate eye strain at night. And with that, that is the 2020 Toyota Camry TRD. Thanks for coming along for the ride. This was certainly a fun one to put together, and I think it speaks volumes to what Toyota is doing. They have said they're not going to do boring cars anymore, and they're really working on that from every model that you can think of. This TRD variant is even found in the bigger, softer sedan, the Avalon. So yes, you can get an Avalon TRD to go with your Camry TRD. And of course, if you're looking for this nice V6 engine, the great 8-speed automatic that sometimes doesn't listen to your shift requests, you can get the excellent drivetrain in a slightly more luxurious version of the Camry with the slightly more expensive $34,000 or $35,000 XSE or XLE trims compared to this $31,000 Camry TRD. And as always, if you're looking to follow along with what LGBT are doing with cars, both on the street and on the racetrack, please do give us a follow right here on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, or at our website, outmotorsports.com. Thanks so much for coming along, and we'll see you for the next one.